Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I was lucky enough to chat with writer and showrunner Jeff Schaffer. We spoke last year at the ATX League reunion, where I got to talk about the creation of that show. This time, we talk about the FX series Dave, which he co-created with rapper and star Lil Dicky, as well as the show he made with his brother, Brews Brothers, about two mismatched siblings creating a craft brewery. It's over on Netflix, and you can watch the entire first season right now. Jeff's a fun interview. He definitely cracks me up, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey, Les, Jeff Schaffer.
Hey, so great to talk to you again. Thanks so much for making
Yeah,
time.
nice talking to you.
Uh, I got to meet you and Jackie briefly at ATX Fest, I guess last year for the league reunion.
Oh yeah, in that loud bar.
Yes, with all the silver. They clear it out of people, but there's so much silverware clanking. It's just a bizarre place to record.
Yeah.
I was originally excited. I'd reached out to you because we've all been loving Dave on the show, and then I got to sit down and watch Brews Brothers, and I think I'm on episode 4 or 5 at this point. The monk episode is my favorite thing so far on it.
Yeah, it gets. By the way, you'll see it gets better and better too. There's some crazy stuff.
You can just see it being the kind of sitcom that as these characters' quirks come out and things get established, it just gets like the founders thing just gets worse and worse and worse, and like you can just see these things snowball. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about bringing on something like Dave to screen, where Lil Dicky's got a personality and a brand, and translating that into the format of a sitcom. But Brews Brothers is just as interesting, if slightly different of a story. How do you take the very real bagging on each other bond that brothers have and make it fit a sitcom format? Because everybody's got funny anecdotes.
Happy to talk about both.
Yeah. So on Brews Brothers, I was stunned to find out that you actually are the Adam in that group, and that you actually did the bedwet prank.
Yeah. So when Greg had this idea for the show, my brother Greg, and he pitched it to me, and I was like instantly intrigued. And not just because the sort of jackass, arrogant older brother was clearly an homage to me, which I don't even know what that says about me. Then I'm like, oh, this guy's a prick. I love him. And so I thought, oh, it's a really funny area for a show. He's like, no one's like, there's all these craft breweries now. It's such a big movement. No one's doing a show about this. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I mean, everybody and their dumb uncle is telling you that their IPA is too hoppy. Or, people just sit around in a bar and drink, and now you got to listen to someone talk about like the apricot notes in in the stout.
Yeah,
it's awful. So I'm like, oh, I want to put an axe to that. And I also thought, I don't know, it just seemed like a really funny area. There's this, the first tenet of business is location, 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 and this place located in Van Nuys is next to like auto body shops, and like there's a sex stores. There's like a high end, like the MedMen of sex stores, like an erotic dispensary is next to them. It's just It's just like an awful place to try and run a business. So I thought it was a really funny idea, and plus the whole brother thing. I was like, oh, this is great. Greg has found a way to really work through some issues in a very comedic way. Because it just seemed like a no-brainer, because it's like also sort of a logical progression from the league, because it's like, what's more popular than football? Beer. And so anyway, I thought it was a really funny idea, and I also thought that it was a fun way for us to work through our stuff. And to answer your question, if those of you people who have seen it, in episode 2, we learned through some flashbacks that the older brother used to, when they were very young, creep down from his bunk bed to the lower bunk where the younger brother Will was, and he would gently fold back the covers, and then he would pee in Will's bed and put the covers back and go back to bed. So Will, the younger brother, thought he was a bedwetter for like the whole time he was 8 years old, and I didn't. there may be that may be based in the truth.
What amazed me, I think, about the league was that I don't follow fantasy football or real football, either one, and that is absolutely not a prerequisite of finding that show hysterical. It's really about friends and how much we bust on our friends and take them down a peg and make sure that everybody, stays kind of grounded. And similarly, I'm not really a drinker. And Brews Brothers is really more about brothers and trying to make a business work. And I love seeing Mike Mitchell pop up as one of the founders. Can you talk a little bit about knowing when a joke's going to be universal, or knowing when are there things that you cut sometimes where you go, no, that's not gonna fit a sitcom that goes out to the masses?
Well, I always say, like, I know where that line is because I can look behind me and see it. I don't have a real governor for that kind of thing, as anyone who's watched the league can attest to. Like, I think one of the ways that a show finds an audience is by word of mouth. And I think that happened with the league, where people said, "Oh my God, you've got to see this. I saw this on the league last night. You've got to watch this scene." And to have scenes where people say, "You've got to watch this," you have to do things that you haven't seen before. And that's one of my favorite things, is I like when we're shooting and you're in the middle of some crazy thing, and I say to the people around in the village, like, you don't see this on TV every day. And I think that's the kind of show I want to make, because that's the kind of show I'd want to watch. And in terms of, like, for Brews Brothers, I mean, everything's so different now, right? Like, when we were making it in this last fall, that it would be wish fulfillment for people, because, I mean, who wouldn't want to own a brewery? But now, in these crazy times, it's wish fulfillment just watching people go to a brewery.
Right.
Right? It's like just to be able to watch someone go and hang out with their friends is like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. So I do feel like in the show, we wanted to sort of explore, like, all the different, like, these two brothers are on radical ends of the spectrum in terms of, like, how to run something. Like, Will, the younger one, who started off the place, is the kind of guy who will drink with you and not charge you for anything because he gets drunk with you and just wants it to be like this perfect hang. He just wants to be social and everybody have fun. And Adam, the older brother, is the snobby beer, like, connoisseur. He's actually a cicerone, which is like a beer sommelier. He doesn't care if one human being in the world likes what. Yes, they all say, and he goes, because you're pronouncing it wrong, and then everyone just yells cicerone at him, and it drives him crazy. So he would just rather everybody just literally sit in a thinking chair and watch him, like, so they can meditate on his craft. Like, he just doesn't care what anyone else in the world thinks. Yes. And so normally, like, oh, these two sort of complement each other because they're both different halves of, different ends of the spectrum. But they don't even make one complete person. It's like, we joke that they have, like, beer Aspergers. They basically have Beersburgers.
That's great. Yeah, I can imagine there just being a thinking chair that no one's ever earned the right to sit in.
Yeah,
that'd be the only chair in the bar, and no one allowed to sit in it, because, like, no one would meet Adam's standard on this.
Very funny.
When it comes to a show like Dave, one of the things that caught all of us off guard was the poignancy of some of the episodes, how it balances. Like, I looked up and realized that you were involved in it because in episode 2 or 3, something happened where I went, this feels like the League. This has to be in the same genetics as the League. And I think it was realizing that that the girlfriend was going to be a full character on the show and would be dishing out barbs and was not going to cower under this. It was like, this feels like the League. This is great. But then,
here's the thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say, but then what really kind of gobsmacked us all was the episode, particularly with Gata's dealing with his backstory and his bipolarity and just dealing with that. And then later on, I think that y'all do it with the inner child episode. Can you talk a little bit about workshopping this show, developing it, getting it to television without it just being, a screwball comedy, which little did he could definitely do that. And what did y'all want to do?
I think a lot of people were very surprised in a good way about that the show had a lot more on its mind than people thought it was going to have, just based on Dave's videos. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, when I sat down and was talking with Dave about the show, he had all these great stories, and these stories were like, there were a lot of like stories that appealed to me as like curb stories, like things that made me laugh. I'm like, oh, this is different from this is a different kind of comedy from your videos. And the real sort of North Star for this whole thing was authenticity. And a lot of these stories are pulled from his life, and they're pulled from Gaeta's life. And I think that's what makes it all the more impressive. Like when you're talking about Gaeta's episode dealing with like, bipolarity and stuff. It's like he's really reliving things that happened to him. And, same thing with Dave and his devil's dick, his messed up downstairs. Like the amount of confidence and strength it takes to be that vulnerable is incredible. And, when Dave and I were just talking, he was talking about his penis and I just said, well, that's the first scene of the show. That's the first scene of the whole series. I want that. That's first. And it was great. It was like, here's the show. Here's what this is going to be. It's going to be really funny, and it's going to be so incredibly, unblinkingly honest that you're not going to believe it.
Yes, that's exactly what y'all have done. Yeah. And it's the same vulnerability that makes you, as braggadocio as rapping is, it's the same vulnerability that makes me bond with him instantly as an artist, where you see this guy and go, yeah, man, I know who that guy is. He's not bullshitting me.
Well, here's the thing. That's the crazy thing. So the other thing, aside from like having a lot of like Larry David in him, when I was sitting there talking to him for the first time, he's telling me, I'm going to be the biggest entertainer in the history of entertaining. And I'm looking at this guy who, looks like a piece of broccoli had a bar mitzvah. And it's just like, wait, you're going to be the biggest entertainer in the world? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, at this point he had done a ton of videos and everyone knew who he was, but he thought that 6 years ago. Yeah. Before he'd even rapped out loud, before his girlfriend had ever heard him rap. And I'm like, this is cartoon level delusion. You're like a rap Don Quixote. You're out of your mind. And it's like, how does anyone live with you when you're that sure of yourself? And can't be. No one else can be as sure of yourself as you are of yourself. And I thought that was a really cool engine for the TV show. And so I think part of in the making of the show was Dave rushing full ahead, being this confident, but also having all these problems, and me just thinking this is what the engine of the show is you're living with someone who, and your best friend or your boyfriend or whatever, you live with someone who may be insane.
Yeah. Because it's amazing that his confidence does not mean that he does not overthink it or second guess things. He's just sure that it'll work, but he's unsure about every other facet of how to get this to the masses, it seems.
Right. He's sure about the ends, but the means he will drive everyone crazy.
Mm-hmm. Has there been a moment in trying to balance this where you've looked behind you and seen that line and thought, no, we can't put that in this episode. It breaks the other thing we're trying to do.
Well, I mean, and for those of you who've seen Dave, I mean, there's the third episode where Dave is romancing this torso-less sex doll. It's like, I was like, well, that's again one of those moments like, well, and he's cleaning it out with a stick and a piece of toilet paper and all this, which I'm like, that's like one of those moments where I go, you don't see that on TV every day. And I think people were shocked that we were doing that, but then it actually ends up being this crazily revealing character moment. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, where the show is at its best, which is like these shockingly these just huge, like these things I can't believe I'm seeing that, but then it all comes from character.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's important to note that sex scene results in one of the most honest and best relationship conversations I think I've ever seen on TV. That
Yeah, and then you throw in a milking table, and everybody wins.
it's seriously, the show's got it all. I can't recommend Brews Brothers enough. Same as the league. I had no interest in football, and I don't drink beer, and I'm just hooked on this now. I was somehow, out of all the jokes that y'all have written and everything that's been on the show, the thing that just broke me, that made people come out of other rooms in my house and go, "What are you watching?" I think Chewie throws a hammer when he's supposed to throw a staple gun in one episode, and I don't know why, but it was just, that was the tipping point moment in the series where that hammer flew across the room, and I brayed laughter. Has there been a moment in making either Brews Brothers or Dave where something simple just broke you?
I mean, in Brews Brothers, in the monk episode, when Adam's getting initiated, which means that I won't describe it for all of your gentle listeners, but you should see it. There's just like, you're shooting it, and 30 seconds of it is going to be on captured and put on into the show, but there's like 2 hours of actually making this crazy initiation that's happening, and so you're just, in between takes, there's just Adam lying on the ground with 4 monks above him on a ladder with a large what I would just say is a hollow like didgeridoo that they're using as a beer funnel. I mean, there's just these crazy moments where like, oh, this is literally insane. This is literally insane what we're doing right now. I don't know, and I don't know if anyone else is going to enjoy this, but I'm laughing my ass off.
Well, those of us stuck at home have something else that we can watch and laugh at, and so we thank you. Thank your brother for not just blocking it all out and actually writing it down.
I know. Really. All I have to say to him is like, Greg, you're welcome. You made a funny show out of it. And I think, by the way, it's like that. I think it's what, look, everyone is not having the best, day, week, month. So it's good to have something that's just sort of, we call it good, clean, filthy fun that people can sit down and just laugh your butt off for half an hour.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for making time to talk to me about it all today. I really appreciate it. I hope y'all are staying safe and doing well.
We're all good. Stop touching your face and stay healthy, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.